Hello everyone, it's Ben from Magfa, and what we're looking at today is the second task for the digital communication solutions, which is the greyboxing. So this is a process that we use in industry in order to basically map out our level before we start modeling and bringing assets in. This is very important because everyone's played a game where the character feels either too big or too small or keeps getting caught on the level, and it's not a lot of fun. So this process is made to try and eliminate that by just quickly painting in, if you will, some details so that we can just see if our character moves along them. So we're going to be using the third person map for this one, which I know everyone has sort of opened here. So when we press play, we should see our third person character. There's a few changes we're going to make just to make sure that we're keeping things to scale, because there's a tendency when people start building levels to just make them very large, and as a result it kind of gets a little bit out of hand. But the other thing I want you to look at here for this task is there is a Word document here, which is looking at greyboxing. So I'm just going to show you that one here. So this is going to go through some of the conditions for this part of the exercise. First of all, we are not going to be using any colors or lighting in this one. We're not going to be using any textures or materials, no static meshes or particle systems. So we are really just sticking to, can my character move around this environment? Okay. So that's just going to be for the first part. Later we'll look at all those other things and bringing them in, but just for this first part, we just want to see, can we greybox out a few different designs? So the other thing is we're going to sort of keep it just to this one square. So we're not going to have a very large level or even the opening third person scene. We're just going to go with this opening square and build it onto there. After we've sort of got all that set up, we're going to start sort of planning out what we want our greybox area to look like. So you can go back and forth between Paint and Unreal, but generally speaking, I want to see some kind of mud map here to show some sort of thought process as to what you're trying to create. So then we should end up with something like this, and then just sort of reflecting on that and being like, okay, what do I like about it? What do I think could maybe be something that we improve on, or something we might need to fix later on? And then we just look at the last one that we've chosen and explain why we're choosing this one to move forward with it. So this is going to be a platform basically for the assets you've already modeled inside of Maya to sit on. So all I want to do in this first sort of video is just look at how to use the geometry brushes. So if we go back to Unreal here, we're first going to go new level and pick this opening one here. And then if we press play, we should just sort of have this sort of level here. Now you'll notice that my character is walking, not running. Because we're working with such a small space, to do that, all we need to do is go into third person blueprint, go into blueprints here, click on third person character, and then here where it says character movement, we click on that, and we just go down here to max walk speed, and instead of 600, which is its default for running, we're going to change that to 150. Go compile, and now when we press play, the character should be walking. Later on we can look at bringing the run back, but I just find that this is a very good way of just making sure that our character's not running into walls and everything, because we are working with a smaller space here, and it encourages us to work with that smaller space. So with that all set up, let's look at geometry brushes. So before, we've probably looked at these sort of static meshes here, so like cubes and things like that. As you can see, they're a static mesh actor, but I can't really change this beyond making it a little bit bigger or smaller or anything like that. If I bring in, say for example, a cylinder, can't really change anything about that cylinder, can't make it hollow or anything else like that. So even though these static meshes are good, they're not very good for building a level. So what we're going to do instead is click here on this tab that says geometry. And we're going to look at some of these sort of shapes here. Now, again, if I go too fast on this, or you want to know how to do this a little bit later, there is a page on our glossary now that is just in here that is called, or under the category, so log back in, the Unreal geometry brushes, and they'll go through how to use this and how to change some of those brushes. So if I go too fast, or if something's not working or making sense, please check that out as well. But just to give you a basic rundown, we have two different types of brushes. When we bring in this box here and we see it solid, that is an additive brush. So we can see down here you've got add and subtract, and here in the details we've got add and subtract. Basically, we have to create a solid brush first, that's the additive brush, and then we bring in another brush that sits on top of it, and this, when we change it to subtractive, we'll cut into that brush. Now, just one more thing on this one, just before we start looking in the details and all the other cool things we can do with this. You kind of have to do this in order. So for example, if I want to cut into this cube here, and I've already got my subtractive brush now, I can't just bring in another cube on top of that subtractive brush and expect that brush to cut into it. It's a Boolean operation, and it basically is taking this geometry here, putting it against the geometry that already exists, and then saying, okay, how do I do this? So if I wanted to cut into both of these cubes, what I would have to do is bring in another cube, put it in between the two, and then turn it to subtractive. And now you can see it cuts into both, okay? So later on when we start doing hallways and doorways, you want to keep that one in mind. Otherwise, I can often see people getting frustrated and being like, I've got this hallway and I'm trying to cut a door into here, but for some reason it's cutting into one cube but not the other. And it really comes down to the order of operations there. So that's a very basic introduction to additive and subtractive. Now let's look at some of the other features. So let's say, for example, I'm creating an interior. So my level is going to be this sort of interior shape in here. I could just make 4 different walls, stack them together, and that would be fine. Then I'd have to rotate one for the ceiling. An easier way of doing this though is if once I've created this box, I can go down here and select hollow. And what this means is that now there's another subtractive box inside that's basically cut into this. I could have done the same thing just by having this box, duplicating this box by pressing Ctrl W, scaling it in and turning that box into a subtractive. That's another way of doing that I could have done. But this way I just find is a little bit easier. The other cool thing about it is that I can decide exactly how thick I want my walls to be. So I can go in here, select hollow, and wall thickness becomes available. I can switch that up to say 26, and now when I look inside I can see that that wall is a lot thicker there. So now if I've got that room there, I can use this other box here to cut into it and become a doorway. Easy enough. So the whole point of this though is for us to decide, okay, is this doorway big enough for my character to get inside comfortably? Because if it's not, then I should probably change that before I start modeling my door, my archway, and everything else that goes with it. So the whole point of this exercise now is to basically come up with something for your assets to be in. So you want to think about the sort of assets you've got. If you've got a medieval chest, you probably want to make something like a tavern or a dungeon or something that suits that. If you've got a sort of, or if you've got some sort of sci-fi sort of looking thing, then you might want to look at that as well. So the other thing I just want to look at is some of these other brushes here, namely the stairs. So we've looked. Okay, yeah. Let's maybe just do something first, and then we'll come back and then we'll look at how to do stairs. If you want to have a look at it, you can. There's also the glossary here, which will go through some of the stuff with stairs as well, and then we'll just have that as another video that goes in there. Okay, cool. So let's just have a go, just at quickly blocking in some sort of an environment for our asset to exist in. And we'll come back in a minute and we'll go from there.